In 1838, Jesuit priests connected to Georgetown University sold 272 enslaved men, women, and children from Maryland plantations to Louisiana to pay off the university's debts. Families were torn apart, children were separated from parents. Entire bloodlines were displaced hundreds of miles away. For many descendants today, the trauma isn't just historical, it's personal. Because when families were sold and records were scattered, identity itself was disrupted. Today, descendants are reclaiming their stories, their ancestry, and their place in history.
When I realized that Jackson was only 3, I was heartbroken. And I wondered what 3-year-old Jackson may have experienced that day over being taken down that path and brought aboard that ship on that day, on November 13th.
This is the Real Roots and Resilience podcast.
Welcome back to the Real Roots and Resilience podcast, where we sit at the intersection of ancestry, faith, and healing in the Black community. I'm your co-host, Christopher Smothers, and today's conversation is titled Complex Trauma from Slavery to Sunday Service.
It's about inheritance, not land or names, but patterns. About how history finds its way into our bodies, our worship, and our sense of safety.
And what happens when faith is asked to hold both memory and healing. Today's guest is someone I trust deeply, not just as a colleague, but as a mentor. Rochell Sanders Prater is a mother, wife, daughter, and a descendant of Jesuit enslavement. She's also a former mechanical engineer and a nonprofit executive, and one of the principal architects of the descendant-led justice movement surrounding the 1838 Jesuit sale. In 2016, like so many families, Rochell learned of her family's connection to the 1838 sale tied to Georgetown University through the work of Patricia Bayonne-Johnson and Rachel Sworn's reporting in the New York Times. For her, that moment was not just historical, it was personal. It became a call. And today, Rochell serves as the executive director of Descendants United, formerly the GU272 Descendants Association, which is a national organization representing descendants of those enslaved by Jesuit institutions and sold in 1838. When she stepped into leadership, the organization was fragile. Since then, she has guided it through a period of renewal. She redefined its governance, clarified its mission, and built systems that allow descendants to be recognized, certified, and supported with integrity. Under her leadership, Descendants United has grown into something more durable, a living infrastructure that brings together genealogy, truth-telling, faith institutions, and community accountability. Her work makes it possible for families not only to reclaim their history, but to organize around it.
When you spend your life helping people find their people, family stops being theoretical. It becomes something you walk into. And that is how she meets the world, with a kind of familial love that makes room for you before you even know you belong.
Please join me in welcoming my play auntie who sometimes acts like my mama and my close colleague. Welcome, Rochell.
Thank you, Christopher. That was a wonderful introduction.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that so much.
It's truly an honor to be able to have you. And I take this opportunity seriously because I think this is one of the first times where I've seen you do an interview where you're really able to speak at length about this important topic. Tell us a little bit about you, where you were at when you learned about this process of our ancestors being involved in the Jesuit sale in 1838 and how that's impacted your trajectory since.
As you shared, I had a degree in engineering, and I call that part of my life, chapter 1. However, 2016, I literally was living in a mindset of hopelessness and despair. It came after I had a run of loss of family from 2004 to 2010.
Oh.
My father passed away suddenly, had been ill in 2004. And then that next year, of course, we know Katrina happened, but I went down to visit my mom. They weren't directly affected by it. However, they were impacted because family came to Maringouin. And then later that year, my sister was diagnosed with colon cancer on Thanksgiving Day. And and so then I traveled down to Louisiana for the Christmas holiday to support the family and kind of get my bearings about what that was going to feel like as a family. Go with my mother the day after Christmas to a doctor's appointment. And they found a mass in her breast, and she had stage 4 cancer. So literally in 2006, my mother and my sister were both going through chemo at the same time. Mommy ended up losing her battle to cancer in May of 2006. And then 2 months later, Deb lost her battle to colon cancers. So the numbness was getting more deeper and deeper and deeper in my spirit. I was here in Cincinnati. I was working a job that I loved my job. I was working at that time with youth in the Gear Up program.
Okay.
So I did love my job. However, I threw myself in my job, right? And then my other sister that lives here in Cincinnati, she was busy with the affairs of Louisiana. And one of the things that it required, we had a sister, Janice, that was slightly emotionally and mentally disabled. But she got her back to a place of where she was able to relocate. My sister brought her back to Cincinnati. And when she came back, I was actually teaching a class at Cincinnati State.
Take your time.
Teaching as an adjunct math class. And it was funny because I always told my students, everybody have to turn your phones off, and including myself. But this particular day, I had not turned it off. And I was teaching, and it went off, and I apologized to the class, and I answered it. And my sister, Sybil, was on the line saying, Ro, I need you to come to the hospital. Janice was sitting on the sofa, and she just fell to the floor. And when I went to the hospital, my sister did not want to make the decision alone as to what we should do. So she was the one who had all those years, the other deaths I mentioned, she was there. So this particular time, I had to be the one to agree and just tell him to go ahead and let her go. She was gone. Yeah. I went into the emergency room and she was gone. So I had to do that. So again, the pain and the suppression and the keeping on moving on expanded. So then in 2010, Sybil's husband, my brother-in-law, Willie, had just retired from GE after years of supporting us and our family and Sybil being in Louisiana. He had colon cancer that came back. And so he began to fight that battle like toward the end of 2008 here in Cincinnati. And although his label was brother-in-law, he was my brother.
Yeah.
Very much so, because he supported me when I had the accident that disabled. I skipped that part. I didn't talk about chapter 1. Yeah. So I'll come back to chapter 1. Yeah. But basically, Willie was my brother by far, no doubt. And he lost his battle to colon cancer as well. I believe the date was the next week after Mother's Day, so in May. So I was like, you know what, God, I'm done. You do what you want. The Grim Reaper is the king. You gonna come around. I'm gonna stop dreaming. I'm gonna stop hoping. And I allowed myself at my job, people I served by that time, I was with the Veterans Upper Bound. They were my life. They gave me life. I was able to pour into them. I was able to empower them versus enable them. However, there was nothing in me. I was a dry bone. I neglected my family, actually, because what I ended up doing, actually, I started in '08 a master's program, and I ended up dealing with the drama of workplace bullying, teaching 2 adjunct classes, and I decided to go to grad school.
What made you choose to still do grad school in the midst of juggling so many different things?
The motivation to do the grad school came from a necessity. I worked at Cincinnati State with these college access program, TRIO programs.
Okay.
And so to elevate my paycheck rate required I have another credential higher up.
Gotcha.
That's the education sector. And so when I chose to do it, I said, well, so the experience was good because I chose to, I matriculated at Indiana Wesleyan. And I tell people, I don't know what it's like today. That was a long time ago. But back then, Indiana Wesleyan Adult Studies program was, in my opinion, the industry standard for adult learners. And what I mean by that, the classes were, I was with a cohort, and the classes were 6-week interval, 1 subject classes.
Okay.
So it made it very palatable to do.
Yeah.
I chose to do on-site. And when I did on-site, I would go every Tuesday from 6 till 10 o'clock at night.
All right, so in case you're wondering, the clean and chemical-free candles we only carry in our studio, they are from one of our proud sponsors, Modern Origins. When was the last time you truly paused? Not to scroll or plan, but just to breathe. At Modern Origins, they truly believe small rituals can make a big difference for your mind and your spirit. The handcrafted intention candles, bath soaks, and wax melts are made with clean ingredients, essential oils, and crystals designed to help you reconnect, release stress, and create moments of calm in your day. They're absolutely perfect for soaking in the bathtub after a trying day, having a quiet moment in meditation, journaling through a breakthrough, and even while watching our podcast. Modern Origins helps you turn self-care into something sacred. Visit modernoriginsus.com to build your ritual and get 15% off your first order with code CALM15. That's CALM15. modernoriginsus.com, because your healing deserves intention.
And the way that the curriculum was laid out, it was, team-based. So it wasn't like you study and you take a test. You had to show competency based upon your presentations and so forth. Loved it. Really, really great model. Kudos to whoever did that, Indiana Wesleyan. But the thing that ended up happening, as you said, because I was lost, as I started out fast, I was still in denial with the deaths of 3 people that I loved dearly, and it was just amazing. I refused to believe, honestly, that they were deceased. But when Janice passed, that was it.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a C- in a class. And for those of you out there, C- is an F in grad school. And so I ended up having to shut down, and that's when I was diagnosed with ADHD. And so I ended up having to get the full workup for that diagnosis, and I took a leave of absence from work from the employment abuse, that kind of a thing.
It sounds like there were so many different things that were happening that, were really weighing on your mental health. And working in an environment where there's like no mental security of like how you can do your job and just trying to serve your patrons and that community versus like the administrative part of that. Do you feel like grad school helped you learn to like manage those things better, or do you feel like you're still learning as a professional how to kind of manage that conflict across so many different intersections of you genuinely being well-intentioned in the work that you're doing and serving so many
I
people?
think that's actually a great question because when I chose business as my major for the master's, I was not interested in business.
Yeah.
And so I lack in that experience in that space at that time with my ability to be confident about the work I'm doing in leading our descendants.
People across the workplace, workforce, are encouraged to go and get education, get more degrees to help elevate, their average household income and all of those things. And so just that right there is almost like demonstrating the reality of, the condition of being Black in America is that we
Mhm.
often are, encouraged to, go get more degrees, and hopefully this will increase your opportunity, your level of exposure to different things, different organizations, groups, to help empower our collective. But even when you do that, there's still like barriers. So tell me a little bit about how learning, about your connection to the GU272 or the 1838 Jesuit sale um, gave you a vehicle to challenge some of those barriers.
I hate to sound like old grandma, but they always said, everything in God's timing, baby, everything in God's timing. I did experience workplace bullying. I actually did, to the point. It was orchestrated such that it was claimed that I said I quit, but what I was saying was, I'm done. I'm done because I done had enough and I walked off. And it was used to say, I quit. So I ended up having to go through arbitration. We had a union in, what was that, December of 2015. It's so funny.
Yeah,
Actually, it's
11
not.
years.
Actually, it's not because that's who God is. So I literally had a 2-year paid vacation because I won my arbitration
Okay.
in 2017. But during that time off, it took me a while because I was dealing with all kinds of emotions of not feeling worthy or not feeling, yeah.
Yes.
But when I found this out, when I read that paper, what I said was, when I read the article, Cousin Maxine, I was getting ready to go to the flight to go to LA. And I didn't have time to think about it then. But when I got back, I read it closely. Cousin Melanie Pryor had posted on Facebook congratulating Maxine for New York Times. Being in New York Times is a big deal for people from my little town, America. So to see that, I'm like, okay, let me see what they talking about. And I look and I saw the name Hawkins. I knew Cousin Maxine was a crump because my grandmother and her grandfather were siblings. And so I knew that, but I never knew about the Hawkins connection. So I said, Hawkins, that gotta be me too. And I realized that. And then that's when the light bulb was lit. The emotion that I felt the most was the emotion of disappointment because my last uncle had passed away in 2013, and this was 2016.
Okay.
And so it was disappointment and hurt. However, I only stayed there a moment because I began to write down what I felt should happen. And what I said was, I said, whatever we do, whatever the answer to what had happened, should have contained these 3 elements.
Yeah.
Reconcile, empowerment, and holistic. And what this meant in my list was slave owners and slavers meet. Then I said, descendants gather. Then I said, undoing racism, social inclusion. Now, what that means, in New Orleans, there's a organization called the Institute for Survival and Beyond. And they do a workshop called Undoing Racism. Social inclusion had to do with the fact that we are not socially included.
Right. What does that really mean? Break it down for our audience.
Okay, so social exclusion is just like our voices, for me, my experience, especially as I described the workforce issue. I worked in college access. And in college access, I worked with a program called GU272, which was a Department of Ed program. And there was a piece of it that included parents. So
they kind of fulfill, for the most part, the kids' part, but they struggled. They did not want to include the parent piece to its fullest. And I remember my colleagues used to always laugh at me because in the meetings I would say, if I could, I would like to say something if I can, or something like that. And I would say things on behalf of the community. And the community looked like me, of course. These grants always are us. We are always at risk. We always have the labels. And so I would tell them, one of the meaningful things I told them, I say, look, we have no right doing what we want to do with these people's kids without including them and having them have a voice in that process. And it was those things over and over again. I'm the one at the meeting advocating to the point that I got disciplined for it. It was seen as being insubordinate. Even with the veterans, same thing. Veterans would didn't have a bus. They would walk to Cincinnati State. They might be late. Well, I was salaried, but because I told my boss and she looked at my schedule and it said I was going to take lunch at 12, well, I had a veteran sitting there with me with 12. I was told that I needed to see them at 12. They needed to learn. I'm not doing that with no grown people. These are veterans. They get there when they get there, and I'm going to serve them.
Tell me a little bit about the timeline of the article and then when descendants really started to gather around and say, okay, we need to come together. We need to do something so our ancestors can get the proper honor they deserve.
That is a great question. As you know, I live here in Cincinnati and I'm alone. So most of the activities for organization were done at home. However, you make an excellent point because I was so excited about this. I must have went to Louisiana 4 times. And I forgot to mention, because of the depression and the loss, I had vowed never to return to Louisiana, but there wasn't a priority.
Okay.
So that's a big point for me.
Yeah.
After I learned the history, I wanted to touch and see it myself and understand it. So I made frequent visits to Louisiana. I was there for Memorial Day. I wasn't, remember I wasn't working, but I was there for Memorial Day. I was hitting the road driving by myself for the first time.
Uh-huh.
First
So
time.
that was a major mental,
It was a major mental.
breakthrough.
Yes. Yes.
Just you having the courage to go and take the
Yes.
adventure of discovery and really reckoning with the pain that the landscape brought you.
Actually, you reminded me, as you say those words, you reminded me of what I told Rachel Swans and what I tell my cousins and everybody today. This history coming to light saved my life. It gave me purpose. It gave me hope. It had me dreaming again. And what I got out of it, immediate return, was the thought of and the hope of and the joy of winning the lottery. But the lottery was not monetary. It was the things money can't buy. And because of the loss I had, that big old gaping hole in my heart, the possibility of knowing it would be filled with family I'd never known before. Oh, it's giving me chills right now.
Yeah.
Because every time I meet him, you mention about the cousin thing. And I didn't invent that word, but you're not my cousin. You're my cousin.
Yeah.
And that is affectionately how I feel about my pay, my what do you call it? My jackpot for this history. That's my lottery winnings.
Yeah.
Because I went across this country, well, the eastern part, and I found them. I have found them. I have found them, y'all. I have found them. And that brings me joy just thinking about it. And then, of course, I now have the grandbaby, and I'm okay that she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So the joy and the reassurance, if you would, the confidence, all of it, the walking tall, the living again, the vibrance.
Yeah. The way you started talking about how all of those tragic events, you were really talking about the foundation of your sense of belonging and coming into this information and understanding that there were so many other places you could belong now and be accepted into a community of people who um, were bonded, by our ancestors' experiences are really powerful. Did you feel that there was proper leadership in place at that time? Did you feel like there was more that could be done? As we know, there's always more you can do, but did you feel like, oh, I might just, sit back and watch, see how things play out, and then, I'll get involved if I have enough time. At what point was it, or were you always in the position of, oh, I need to be at the table when these things are happening?
I actually had no interest in being at the table
Okay.
because of the PTSD of being at the
Mhm.
table and being disciplined for being at the table.
Okay.
And so my goal and my contribution to healing, again, I'll finish the list, but I will tell you before I go back to the list, it had to do with me using my own resources, if you will,
Yeah.
to travel to Louisiana to tell people and convince them. I would tell them, what do you think about, well, for the sake of people understand, I would say, what do you think about the Georgetown thing? But I knew it was a Jesuit thing, but that was too deep at that moment to go
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah.
But
That's
they
a
would
whole
go,
conversation
yeah,
in
it's a whole
itself.
conversation. So they would basically say, oh, you talking about that Maxine Crump thing? And I'm like, that's not a Maxine Crump thing, you guys. That's you,
Yeah.
Heel person. That's you, Harry's person. That's you, But they wasn't getting it. So
Yeah.
that let me know that I actually, after seeing Cousin Joe on September 1st with Karen and Patricia and Sandra at Georgetown, I watched that live stream, whatever that was back in that time.
Yep.
September 1st, 2016. And when he said nothing about us without us, I'm like, who is that? and I literally had heard of Joe. Joe Stewart is our poster boy, if you will, for our town for success.
Okay.
So people reverence him. So I had gotten an email from cousin Maxine to participate on, try to get people to, and organize or whatever. But I'm like,
How do you really organize?
I'm in Cincinnati. What
in a
am I
space where
doing?
you don't
Yeah.
actively live there.
So I had people contact information. So I saw Cousin Joe and I reached out and I was, oh my God, that was awesome. Da 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 da.
What was the beginning of dissemination look like? Was it, oh, let's, share the article and let's just get people reading so they can kind of inform themselves? What did the beginning of that organization look like?
Well, I'm not 100% privy to that. I know from oral testimonies that they came together, they met. I believe Cheryl and Karen Harper met first. In New Orleans, it appears the New Orleans group was the first ones to take action.
Okay.
And Deborah Tilson and Jessica Tilson got involved with it. What I did, though, to your point, because of my frustration, and I told Cousin Joe this, I said, we got to let the folks in Maryland understand what this is and that this is them. And he said, you don't think they know you? He said, you think they? I said, they'll listen to you, Cousin Joe. So yours truly
really ushered
garnered an event in February, right during Mardi Gras.
Mhm.
Was able to use my agency and get the North Ippaville Community Center. I had a gathering. I call it a Black History Month Honoring Our Ancestors program. And he came and spoke and told his vision of the foundation. And I just was educating them about as much as I had found. I want my family to know in Maryland, I love you guys to death, 100%. And I go through all hell and water to protect you. However, this is my moment of truth. And this is my truth.
Right.
When I put the program together, I had put certain descendants on my agenda because of their passion about the history.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than tell me they not coming, they did not show up.
Okay.
And I can't, I'm not gonna guess why. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
However, I will say, family, I love y'all to death. But one of the things that I experienced on numerous occasions is that lack of inability to tell folks no.
Okay, so almost like here's the invitation, like no response,
No
just you
response.
got it,
Yep.
and you don't know
Yep.
how they felt about
Yep.
it. There was no feedback.
Well, in
Yeah.
this particular thing, I put you on my agenda,
Mhm.
and I asked more than once.
Oh, so you had made a program
Yes.
for them to be on, and they just
Yes.
didn't come at all.
Yes.
Period, point blank.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. And
that's
no, I'm
different.
sorry I didn't come. No, nothing. Just
Yeah.
left me hanging
And are
high.
these people who like said, "Hey, I want to be on the program," or was it just
They
like,
agreed.
okay,
That's the issue.
that's interesting. So they wanted to kind of have this space to speak,
I,
but then they were given an opportunity and they didn't really take advantage of that moment and be present.
yeah, the short answer is yes.
I think oftentimes we as a community, especially those who are really the most in need, are still underneath an oppressive system
Right.
and mentality to where it's like, yes, I understand, this is what I need to do, but can I afford the expense of the consequences of making that change? Because I still have to live in this community. We're trying to fashion an environment where we can all live in harmony. But what is the cost, the collateral damage of getting to a place of harmony? And and what does it say about how we as a society are qualified in that environment? Part of the work that I was doing with Fulton County Reparations Task Force was when we were quantifying the value of how much like gross dollars were paid in taxes between the Black and the white community from emancipation, during slavery and all the way up until today. It was when you looked at, first of all, enslaved people added value to the land. The land didn't really have as much value sitting by itself. And how does that challenge the psyche of people who truly believe they are superior, and truly have benefited from the systems of superiority for so long, to give someone else light, to give someone else a form of equality through reparative justice in that way? Will they still be able to afford the same quality of life? Will they still be able to experience a certain stream of resources that they're used to receiving if Black people or people who are descendants of um, the transatlantic slave trade have not historically gotten? So bringing it back into this micro setting, because I want to play that out for everybody and come back in. When we think about what happens when Black people start to make more than white people, how does that impact the way that we rely on each other versus other systems where we have to ask for opportunities instead of creating them ourselves? What happens when we can we create the table and the seats at it? You know what I'm saying? And so
So
that's what I'm thinking about.
that's interesting that you bring that up because Nick shared a video of I don't know the lady name, but she talks like I talk. And what I'm about to say is telling.
Mhm.
I am a child of integration, segregation, I should say. And that was one of the most joyful times of my life. And the reason why it was joyful because I got to watch the parallel economy in action. I went to Cousin Burnett Hawkins' store. I got gas. Well, I didn't get gas, but we had gas. We had grocery. We had the center for dance. We had a baseball diamond where they played baseball.
Mhm.
So I saw that. I saw it was tons of
Created your
little.
own entertainment.
We had
your own spaces,
it was
yeah.
tons of little juke joints
Mhm.
in this little town,
Yeah.
right? So you had choices, and people appreciated your business.
Mhm.
It was poured in and came out. We were duped when it came to what integration ended up actually being. I know with all my heart it was not intended to be what it was. Maybe integration wasn't the right word for it because we integrated into them
Mhm.
rather than being able to retain us.
Mhm.
And so I'm one of those people that, and all my vanilla friends, because I call them vanilla, because There's no white, there's no black
Right.
people.
And
And whatever. But all my vanilla family out there know. They know Rochelle's heart. They know Rochell. And this is not coming from a place of
division.
harm or division. It's just like nobody complains about the Asian community supporting the Asian community. Nobody complains about the Latino community supporting the Latino community. I watched that expand here in Cincinnati. I got to witness it. When I moved here in 1992, there were no Latino businesses in the greater Cincinnati. I live about 15 minutes north of here. However, there was sprinklings in Kentucky. Not sure why. I had moved from California and I just began to fall in love with Mexican food. So I was looking. There was none. There was Taco Bell. That's not Mexican food. And so, but I watched that. In fact, I was even a part of an effort to welcome the Latino community in the city of Springdale, which is a community next to my suburban community, when I was attending the Vineyard Church here in Cincinnati. And it was an intentional welcoming kind of a thing. It required interacting with people in my community.
Right.
So that we would not, commit the same things that had been happening to us. So I watched it. So I know if we were to go to Springdale now and you drive through, you would be like, there was no Latin, there wasn't no stuff. Now everything got their own, everything. We haven't had the chance we had that though. We had it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. We had it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about being able to tell truth and legacy and preserving it. That's what I think happened with us. I think there was not a thought process where we had some kind of effort to preserve that part of us, if you will.
How do we use those moments of intersectionality to protect what we're building? Because like you said, other ethnic groups have created networks within their own communities to become self-sustainable. Louisiana, most of the Latin American community doesn't even vote because they're self-sustainable.
They don't
need to rely on other things, that the government is giving out because they have a plan and they have a network of resources that they can create their own businesses. They can go work on houses. They can be literally self-sustainable. So what do you think our fascination or our determination or our fixation is on equality? And I understand better now, we're really talking about equity.
Yes.
How do you think that plays into, and how we need to necessarily frame it so that we're not attacked by, people who are saying, well, my ancestors didn't do that and we're living in the 21st century. And
we have been given a gift from God. When I say we, and I want your audience to also understand that Christopher and I happen to be descendants of the 1838 sale. The GU272 has become anyway, I'm anti-GU272 because it implies that it was Georgetown 272 and it was the Jesuits 27. It was the Jesuits 272 on an agreement in Versailles in 1838. So I wanted to say that. However, the gift that I'm speaking of, let's just deal with that diaspora of the Jesuit slaveholding in the United States, the 272. We have an opportunity with just that demographic of descendant community. And apparently there's a model out there that said there's probably about 10,000 of us that came from that point back then. And by the way, I wanted your audience to know I didn't say everything about me. I happen to be the great-granddaughter of one of the enslaved. He was 3 years old when they bought him in 1838. Yes, I know I look younger than I am. But he was born in 1838 and he died in 1902. And so we closer than this than what people always think. I think that's because we bought the okie doke of the intercontinental slave trade. And I was just talking with Christopher behind me. There is the here at this museum, we're at the Freedom Center in Cincinnati. They call it the internal slave trade. And I was telling him my um, disagreement with that term because it should be domestic slave trade. But anyway, we have an opportunity where we can test out what it's like in modern day.
Yeah.
Because we are a small sample group. So one of the ideas that one of our descendant cousins actually brought up as we roll out, we rebranded ourselves to include all the descendants of Jesuit enslavement from GU272 Descendants Association to Descendants United. Board member for our organization mentioned her passion and her vision is to have a descendants marketplace. Where we would have a platform where we promoted our goods
our
and
own
service,
That's what I'm
internally.
working on.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so that is a good beginning, and the reason why I love experiments, if you will. So I would suggest, we garner that. That will be a reality, by the way. That's not something we're talking about, everybody. We're working on that, laying that as we roll out our new organization. But that would be, and we welcome partners out there who have some funds, and not all funds is monetary, right?
Right.
Resources, correct. Resources. So to your point, that's where I see an opportunity for us as a descendant group to be able to garner that.
Yeah, partnerships with the
Yes.
community.
Yes.
Rochelle,
Yes.
so this is the mental health question of the day.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me be a part of this. So this is such a great opportunity for Chris and for everyone watching today. So I would love that you answer this question for our viewers. You shared something incredibly powerful, that learning this history quite literally saved your life. You talked about how experiencing depression, loss, and a deep sense of emptiness, and how discovering your ancestral truth didn't bring money, but brought family, belonging, and hope. From a mental health and identity standpoint, can you reflect on how learning that your ancestor was sold as a child and then reconnecting with descendants, across the country, reshape your sense of self, your healing, and how you understand purpose, resilience, and belonging today?
Wow, my mental health journey is such that I had a head injury. And so in 1990, I was retired for 8 years on disability. And that's how I ended up transitioning from engineering to college access. That journey in itself was one, right? But to lose somebody, loved ones, never to see them again, to call a phone number that I had learned as a child what it was, and to call it and for it to go, this number is no longer working. I had no idea that God was preparing me to walk in a purpose that can literally change the world. Even when I'm feeling down, even when I'm feeling low, that for me, I always can literally rebound quickly. I'm not even afraid of dying before my time because this assignment has to be completed. And then I'll be okay. That's how much I trust God. This is an opportunity that I don't know anybody could get. I'm so blessed and honored that he took me through what he took me through, because I garnered humility, I garnered intelligence, all the things necessary to interact in this space with the descendants. the ones that's struggling with their place in this history, I'm here and called to hold space so that their voice could be heard, to help them understand this is my story, but it's our history. I want them to be able to take those 4 words, or how many words, and get where I am today. And not be concerned about money and whatever. Can't nobody take this story from me. I got it. So when I learned the history, before I learned the history, I felt this big, and I felt like a prune, if you will, visually. When I got the history, as they say, can't nobody stop me. I've been in the spaces with people I never thought I would be in the room with. Not because they better than me, but because I've been able to get the access to them. And I have told them things from my heart. And I believe we're in a time where people are starving for authenticity. And so I get to show them what it looks like.
Definitely appreciate your authenticity. And how would you say, like, your descendants, how would you say, like, what words would you describe about your descendants that has shaped your identity and who you are today?
One of the interesting things about my descendancy, for me, as you can see, I'm a dark complected African American, so that has always been a bone of contention for me. The colorism and that was real. And one of the interesting things about that I've noticed is that it appears that we can come to the table and verbalize that with each other now. We can talk about that. And we can, at least for me, I'm always the one I tell people this all the time, I am the riding king of the descendant community. Can we just get along? And I want to do more than just telling them. I want to show them why that's necessary, right? Because, as I said, we have to build, not only do we have to honor our ancestors, but we have to build that descendant marketplace. And we got to get along to be able to do that.
Thank you for lending your lived experience and stories to us. And I know that this will hit exactly who it's supposed to hit and resonate with the people it's supposed to resonate with. And yeah, as always, grateful for everything that you have done and offer this community. And it doesn't, I don't take it lightly that what you've been carrying this whole time. And I just want to personally say thank you from the bottom of my heart for seeing so many worthy individuals to champion this cause with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank your audience as well.
And thank you all for listening.